coming to a theater near you. We know you haven't made your credit card payment. Imagine the suspense, the uncertainty, and the guilt. What will happen next? Who is calling? And do you dare answer the phone? Who is leaving those notices in the mail? Is there any relief in sight? Where can you hide when they have your number and they know where you live? Live this nightmare through the eyes of Nicole as she bumbles her way by making poor choices until everything seems to be falling apart. This movie has not yet been rated. Don't divulge the surprise ending.
Credit is when you borrow money from someone else and promise to pay them back later.
Usually, interest is involved. That means you have to pay them back extra money because they gave you the money in the first place.
Lots of times, credit card companies try to get people our age to open accounts. They do this by sending out what are called credit card solicitations. These are applications for the credit cards sent through the mail. The companies make it easy to get cards.
80% of people in their late teens and early 20s have credit cards, and 25% have 4 or more credit cards.
Bad use of credit can cause problems. Between the years 1993 and 1998, the number of young people who went broke doubled.
The average young person has a $2,700 credit card balance. That's up almost 50% in 2 short years. The purpose of this video is to help you make careful, intelligent choices when working with credit and using credit cards.
People have to understand that what happens to your credit rating now can affect your life for years to come. Your credit history stays with you for 7 years.
I never really thought about it when I was using my credit card. It was just so easy to pull it out and buy things with it instead of using cash.
So then you go to buy a car or something and they pull up your credit rating. And then you can't buy that car because you haven't kept up with your credit card payments. Your credit line stinks, and the car dealer doesn't want to risk setting you up with a loan.
It's not just to buy a car. They do credit checks when you apply for a job or rent an apartment or buy a house. Your credit rating is way more important than you might think, and bad credit can hurt big time.
There's no need to have more than one credit card. Most people actually have more than one, and many have 4 or more credit cards. That's not a good idea for a lot of reasons. First of all, it's hard enough to keep track of what you're spending on one card. With more than one credit card, it's easy to lose track of your monthly spending. Having more than one credit card encourages overspending or needless spending, and certainly complicates the process of keeping track of things. When you use cash, you know exactly what you're spending. You reach into your pocket, and the money is either there or not.
When interviewed, most people say they use a credit card for emergencies or as a convenience. That's fine as long as you're keeping a mental picture of what you're spending. The best way to treat a credit card is as a purchase enabler. That means you have the money in the bank and you're using the credit card to make purchases now rather than writing a check or using cash. Then when the credit card bill arrives in the mail, you pay the full amount to avoid all interest charges.
Many stores offer store credit cards to their customers. These cards are only used for purchases made at that store. Usually the stores encourage you to sign up for the cards with a special deal, such as 10 or 15% off of your purchases for that day. That sounds good, but having too many of these store cards can harm your credit rating.
How is having a bunch of store credit cards harmful?
Every time you open a new credit card, there's what's called an inquiry made into your credit history. Too many inquiries can hurt because it looks like something's wrong with their credit rating. A lender might think that something is wrong when too many inquiries are made in a certain period of time.
Many people look at their credit line as spendable income. That is, they consider the amount the credit card company is willing to advance them as money they can spend. But it isn't money you have earned, and you are borrowing it, and it will cost you to use it. It must be paid back.
Look at what I got in the mail. It's a check from my credit card company for $1,000. I can deposit it in my checking account right away. Do you know what I could do with $1,000?
Wait a minute. You're not thinking about this correctly. The credit card company is willing to give you a $1,000 credit line, but you have to pay them back, and with interest. Just because they say you can spend that much doesn't mean you should. When you use the credit card, you're borrowing money from a company, and they hope that you'll pay them back over years so that they can gain a lot of interest charges.
I don't care about that. This kind of money means a great party and tons of fun.
Having a high credit line may sound good, but that doesn't mean you should think of this as spendable income. You haven't earned that money. The credit card company wants you to use their card to make purchases so that they could charge interest on the loan they have extended to you.
I'm starving, but I don't have any money.
Yeah, I don't really have any money on me. It looks kind of expensive.
Yeah, I wish I had cash, you guys. I'm totally broke. But you know what? I got my credit card. So I'll pay. I'll
Really?
pay.
Are you
Yeah.
sure about that?
Yeah, I'm serious. It's just a credit card. Let's go.
All right, let's go.
I'm starving.
Don't make unnecessary or spur-of-the-moment purchases or to impress people. It may be fun to treat your friends to dinner, but if your budget can't afford it, it could turn into a big mistake.
Your credit card bill has a minimum payment amount. A lot of people think that's all you have to pay each month. However, if you're paying just the minimum payment on a large balance, you could be paying that amount for years. And credit card companies don't mind that they're going to be earning a lot of interest over that time. Paying the minimum amount isn't a good idea. For example, if you had a $2,700 account balance and you paid just the minimum payment of $54 a month, it would take you 28 years to pay off that debt. Instead, if you paid $100 and not that much more, you'd pay off that debt in less than 3 years.
Why would it take so long for the balance to be paid off?
Good question. Well, the minimum charge is really mostly the interest fee for that month based on the amount of a person's credit card balance. So if you only pay that, it isn't subtracting very much from the actual balance. You still owe almost $2,700. It's a better idea to pay as much as you can.
It's a good idea before you take on debt to have a plan or schedule for paying it off. One excellent strategy for being a wise user of credit cards is to be a balance payer. That means you're paying off the full balance every month and avoiding interest charges.
If your credit card is lost or stolen, you need to contact the credit card company immediately. Don't put it off, drop everything you're doing because these people work fast. If you contact the card company as soon as possible, the law says you're only responsible for the first $50 of any credit card misuse. In reality, most card companies will waive the $50. So, take a piece of paper or an index card, record the credit card number and the card company's phone number, and place that information in a very safe place in your home. So if you need to contact the card company, you'll have the information handy and ready.
You'll probably receive an unbelievable amount of credit card solicitations in the mail over the next few years. One thing that a lot of people don't know is that this is one of the major causes for identity theft on people in our age group. You need to tear these things up into tiny, tiny pieces so that people can't get your information.
Are you overwhelmed by monthly credit card payments? Do you find yourself in constant debt? Do you dread bill paying time? Are you constantly juggling your bills in a feeble attempt to stay afloat? Is a trip to the mailbox a nightmare of fear? Then you need ConsoliPay. That's right. ConsoliPay combines all of your credit card payments into one huge payment. You save on effort and time by writing just one big check to cover all your credit card bills. ConsoliPay may be just the solution you need. No more spending hours writing out check after check for all those credit card bills. Just 5 minutes a month can cover all those expenses What's in it for us? Consolidate, another fine service brought to you by the people who gave us Consolidate, the ultimate dating service. Consolidate gives you a movie, dinner, and dancing all in one quick 2-hour block. Consolidate consolidates all the best parts of a typical date into one joyful block of time.
Seriously, you don't want to let your credit card debts get so out of control that consolidating them in this way sounds like a good idea. To consolidate your loans means that the consolidating company will pay off all your debts. You then make one payment to the consolidating company each month. However, the interest rates are still very high, so it'll still take a while to pay it off. For example, let's say you were in the hole for about $10,000. And you consolidated it into a 3-year loan at 18% interest. Your monthly payment would be about $360 per month.
Some people take a head-in-the-sand approach to their credit card problems. They ignore first notices, second notices, or they just throw the bills away. Credit problems aren't going to just magically disappear because you ignore them or throw them away. In fact, ignoring notices and avoiding talking to the company will only make matters worse. If you find that you're over your head and can't make even the minimum payments, talk to the credit card company and ask for some help and relief. Ask them to lower the interest rate, or ask for some assistance in setting up a payment schedule that fits your budget. Remember, ignoring things will only make the situation worse. Work with the company in order to maintain a good credit rating.
The idea is to keep in mind that your credit rating is important for the rest of your life. So, during these first few years of having access to credit cards, it's important that you make every effort to establish a good credit rating.
I thought a balance transfer would solve my problem. I was having trouble with my credit card company. I had just moved into my first apartment and saw some awesome furniture. I couldn't resist it. It was perfect for my new place. So I charged it to my card. After receiving 2 or 3 late payment notices, I transferred the balance to my other credit card and used that credit card to pay off the first card. Well, it took care of the first company and it bought me some time, but it turned out to be a big mistake. This first company dropped me, and then the second card company started with the notices and phone calls that I was trying to avoid. I guess it really didn't solve any problems. It actually just complicated things. I suppose my first mistake was to ignore the notices.
One vicious cycle people can get themselves into is balance transfers. That's when you pay off the balance with one credit card by transferring the balance to another credit card. People fall into this trap with what are called teaser rates. The new credit card has a low introductory rate of 6 or 8%. But the trap is that usually that rate goes away in just a few months and then you're back to paying 18 or 19%. So don't think that by transferring that balance to another credit card, you're paying off that balance. You're not. You're just moving it to another category.
You can use your credit card to obtain cash advances. It can be used at banks, ATM machines, or even grocery stores. The thing is that your credit card company is willing to advance you the money, but the interest rate on cash advances are often higher than the interest rate on purchases. And even worse, there is no grace period. Things purchased with a credit card usually have a grace period. That means when you make a purchase and pay the entire amount when the next month's bill is due, you avoid all interest charges. Oh, but cash advances are different. Interest starts immediately and there's no way to avoid it. So though you end up with cash in hand, the truth is it is very expensive. Here's an example. You use your credit card to obtain a $100 cash advance. There's a $3 fee for using the ATM and the interest rate is 21.9%. If you wait a year to pay it back, that $100 cash advance will end up costing you $125. Does that seem like a good economic plan?
it's a good idea to know the interest rate on your credit card. It will definitely vary from one card company to another. However, most people don't pay attention to that rate, and if asked, wouldn't be able to tell us what that rate is on a specific card. When you first sign up for a card, you should ask what the interest rate is and whether that rate will change over a period of time. A lot of the times, the rate will start off small, and then within just a few months, it will balloon up to a much higher rate. You can find the percentage rate on your monthly bill. Here it is at the bottom of the bill. For this card, it is at 19.99%. Notice that the cash advance rate is at 21.99%.
When you sign up for a credit card, be sure to read the fine print. You might be surprised by what you find. For instance, in many cases, that great low interest rate that attracted you to the credit card in the first place can suddenly change to something much higher overnight if you're even 1 day late paying your bill. So pay your bill on time. I mark my calendar to show when I need to mail my payments.
I was having a terrible time making payments on my credit card, and at over 21%, it seemed that everything was going to interest. I finally talked to my credit card company, and they agreed to lower my interest rates to help me out. I now have a payment plan established with the company to pay off my balance within the next 3 years. I could have shopped around when I was first looking at credit cards because interest rates do vary. In fact, they can vary quite a bit. A friend of mine, she was paying 11% when I was at 22%.
That interest rate makes a big difference. Let's say you bought a bike for about $500 and you want to pay for it over a 3-year period. At 11%, you'll pay about $90, but at 22%, you'll pay $180. So your $500 bike really costs $680.
Actually, there's a way for that $500 bike to really only cost you $500. That's to be a balance payer, which means you pay the full amount on the credit card bill each month. Remember, when you use a credit card, you're using somebody else's money. You're expected to pay that money back with interest. The only way to avoid any interest rates is to pay the full amount on the credit card bill each month. Otherwise, the interest kicks in.
Credit can be a good thing. It can be a way for people to get something that they need right now when they don't have the money. It can be considered a tool. Is a hammer a good thing or a bad thing? Well, it's a good thing if you hammer a nail into a piece of wood, but a bad thing if you hit your hand with the hammer.
Credit cards can be very useful. Some transactions are impossible without credit cards. It is very difficult to rent a car, a hotel room, or to make internet purchases without a credit card. There are credit cards and there are debit cards. When you use a credit card, you're borrowing money from a company. When you use the debit card, you're using money that is already in a checking account at a bank. So when you use the debit card, you're using a piece of plastic as if you were writing a check, taking money from your checking account.
Be sure to pay attention to any annual fee your credit card company might be charging you. Most cards out there don't charge an annual fee. They make their money off high interest rates. But some do charge an annual fee, especially if they're offering you a low interest rate, such as 7 or 9%. If your credit card company is offering you a low interest rate, be sure to check their annual fee.
You have to pay your bills on time. If you don't, you get hit with the late fee, and that hurts. $20 or $30 just for being a few days late.
Hopefully by now we've convinced you to be a smart user of credit cards. Use your credit card, don't be used by it.
Pay on time to avoid all late fees.
Try to find a card with no annual fees.
And by all means, avoid cash advances.
It's really smart to be a balance payer. Pay the full amount of the credit card bill each month. That way you avoid all interest charges.
Over 20% of students carry a balance of at least $10,000. If someone like that wanted to pay that off over 2 years, it would cost them $500 a month.
It's smart to pay attention to the interest rate on your credit card. Shop around. If all else fails, then ask the credit card company to reduce the rate they're charging you. You'll be surprised at how often they'll agree. Take any of those notices they sent you seriously. And above all, don't take a head-in-the-sand approach to your credit problems. Any notice the credit card company sends you isn't going to go away because you ignore them or throw them away.
It's important to remember that you are trying to establish a strong, sound credit history so that you'll have good credit for the rest of your life.